Hey everybody, Keith Dotson here with part 2 of my oral history of the ghost town at Union Level, Virginia. If you haven't seen part 1, you might benefit from watching it first so that some of the names you hear in this video will have some context. This video features Jimmy Thompson, a local resident raised in Union Level who remembers the town as it was when it was still a thriving community. And he also owns 3 of the abandoned buildings that comprise the old ghost town, and he knew many of the people lying in the earth here. Hope you enjoy hearing about some of the town's bygone residents now resting in this peaceful cemetery. Thanks for watching.
R.A. Williams' house. It ran one of the stores. Mr. Williams is buried right over here in the cemetery, right up in the front. This church right here holds a lot of the history of this community. The Wilkersons, the Joneses, most of these people, Gordons, they were very prominent in their neighborhood. It's just goes back a long ways. If you look at the sign here at the front, it was established in 1805. I mean, Union Level wasn't even talking about history till 1840. All right, this is some of the Simmons family. John Walter, 5936. I didn't know them. Lucy Ogden Simmons. Miss Parkhurst, that was some of the Mara family. All right, here's William H. Simmons. I didn't know him. Mr. Lynn Simmons. All right, William Leon Simmons right here. He was instrumental in building Union Level. 1885 to 1939. I didn't know him, but I heard him speak of him. This right here was the preacher, and that was Mr. Sterling Wilkerson and Miss Anna Lou. That was Mr. Simmons' sister. And this right here was a lady that I told you that was so good to us when we were kids, Miss Rose Simmons Owens. She lived from 1971. Well, in the 50s, you know, she was still very active and what have you. And her great niece was the one that I used to ride the horses with. And she would give us a quarter. This is William Leon Wilkerson. That was Mr. Lynn Simmons' nephew that he thought so much of. He just died in 2011. His wife is still living. This was John Wesley Jones. He was in World War I. His son, Junior, was in World War II. He was the one that was at the Nuremberg trials and was Patton. And 1960. I have a lot of good memories of him and his wife, Miss Louise. She was Louise Turner Jones. Now he was another one that had a vision. Apples and peaches and stuff. There were a lot of them sold locally around here, but he'd load a truck, and most of the time it went to Richmond on Saturday, and he would carry peaches and apples down there to the produce. Lynn and Wes Jr. would ride in the back of the truck, which, you know, never run over 45 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. They would have them a basket set aside to throw at road signs. Most Jones get out, he said, I could have swore I had another pack of peaches. And this is Wes Jr.'s thing right here. He died in 2020. And he was quite a man. His wife, Beverly, she was a nurse. She was the one that taught the Sunday school class that kept the kids together, and she was just a fun person for young people to be around. This is Mr. C.P. Jones' wife. She lived till 1950. Mr. Jones lived till 1966. This is Mr. Jones' son, Darrell. Darrell was afflicted in his left hand. The most he did was around Union Level. He would run from farm to farm, keeping up with the sharecroppers. Always being back at the store 3 or 4 times in the morning. I'd jump in the car and go with him sometime. These were the Watson family, and most of them lived over really near Baskerville, but they had always come to church over here. This is part of the Gordon. This guy I knew very well. He used to work up in Fredericksburg and Northern Virginia, and he always came back to Union Level to visit family. And his name was Gerald. This is a lady that came here from New Jersey. And Mr. Wes Jr. Jones kind of took to helping her and her husband, and in Janito. They lived in Mr. Jones's old house up there, Mr. C.P. Jones's house. They bought that for a while. And she really wasn't really known around here. Anyway, Mr. Jones took it upon himself to be a good friend. He was a good Christian man. This right here is Chalmers Thomas Gordon. He was born in 25 and died in 72. He was the one that had the trouble walking and stuff, and he was down there at the post office when it caught on fire. I mean, nobody blames him. He was a nice person. It was just an accident. He came home from overseas. He brought a Japanese lady. We called her Michi, or Michiko. And she lived up on top of the hill up there, just out of Union Level. And when they came back, they had one daughter, which was Japanese. And then they had two children after they settled here. And they were a wonderful family. Everybody loved Michiko. And they had three children. It was Carolyn, Chalmers, and Cynthia. I saw them back in 17 when she was buried. I hadn't seen them in a long time. And that's the way you get together and see most people. It'll be at a funeral. And it's sad. That was a fella that was on a horse up in front of Buckhorn School I showed you. Robert A. Watson, 35 to 99. And that one broke my heart. He spent a lot of time with me, and I spent a lot of time with him. And his wife is still living. She's just a little bit older than I am. But I'd run around behind Bob at horse shows and stuff. He'd turn around, he said, "Jim, don't walk up behind her, she might kick you." He must have told me that 1,000 times. You have to stop and look again at the time you were in. Nobody had a lot of cars. I mean, there were some, but they didn't give them to the kids on Saturday night to take off on, you know. And I used to tell people, I said, everybody married within a neighborhood, the mule had to go back to work on Monday. You know, you didn't take him out and ride him to death on weekends. And they were burying cousins and stuff. Most of the time when somebody from outside the neighborhood come in, somebody had been out of town to go to work or was in service. And they would bring them mate back, you know.
So your wife is from here as well?
My wife lived down north of South Hill, which is about, let's see, about 10 miles from here. Yeah, I went over in Lunenburg, well, no, I didn't. I didn't cross the river. She was still in Mecklenburg County. But, well, she got some Union level dirt on her feet. Couldn't get her to leave. The way that I would find out a lot of this stuff was I would be with Rosalind Jean and Miss Rose Simmons, and she would go visit relatives around, you know, and most of them would be old people. And I knew enough to know who I was looking at, but not enough to know anything about them. Robert A. Williams. My half brother, when he was little, I think he stayed with everybody in the neighborhood. He would stay with most of Ms. Williams and hang around down at the store. And C.W. went in service at 17 years old in 1942. And he got leave to come home for the funeral for Mr. Williams. And he got here, they were just covering up the grave. Mm-hmm. But I remember him telling me that story a lot of times. Yeah, there's a lot of history. Hard enough for my generation to go back and research some of it. This next generation won't ever care anything about it.
What I always think about these people in the ground is there's some history that's known, but there's so much stuff that you'll never know.
So much goes away.
Yeah,
It
so
is.
much stuff that you have no idea about.
It's stuff that only they could tell you. Here's one of the petty boys. That was World War I. But there were E.L. Petty, J.D. Petty, W.E. Petty. There were a lot of them. And what I found about them over the years, they were mostly in banking, or either they were merchants. All right, here's that boy's grave right here. Jimmy Kirkland, Gerald. Susan married him sometime in the 90s or early 90s or whatever. But they used to come back here and visit Lynn and Annalise Wilkerson. And he worked for Coca-Cola, and it was just an unusual thing. I know they had been to Texas down next to Mexico living, but you know, Coca-Cola transferred them around so much. And 49 years old.